They said I was broken because I couldn't shift, defective, worthless. So my father sold me to a man with wandering hands and breath that reeked of rot. I ran into a cursed forest instead and found 4 portals to 4 different universes, each with a powerful alpha who'd already claimed me, a warlord, an empath, burning himself out for me, a perfect partner in a dying world, a primal god who'd been searching for me for centuries. This is how I went from wolfless girl being sold to a predator to a sovereign who chose herself over destiny. Because sometimes the strongest bond isn't with an alpha. It's with yourself.
Part 1. The Wolfless Girl. The marriage contract lay on the wooden table, ink still wet, her father's shaky signature already dried at the bottom. "Sign it, girl." Her mother's fingers dug into Roza's shoulders. "We've got no other choice." Through the kitchen window, Grendor Slate waited outside, picking his teeth with a knife. 40-something, belly straining against his guard uniform, eyes that crawled over her like slugs on wet stone. 3 days ago, he'd cornered her in the same kitchen while her parents argued terms in the next room. "I'll make you scream real pretty on our wedding night," he'd whispered, his hand sliding down her arm. His breath was sour with ale and rot. "Bought and paid for, you are." His hand had moved to her breast, squeezing hard enough to bruise. Roza had frozen then. 20 years of being called wolfless, broken, worthless had taught her that girls like her had no power, no voice, no value. When Grendor's other hand had started hiking up her skirt, she'd finally yanked away, knocked over a chair, fled upstairs while his laughter followed. Now, staring at the contract, she could still feel his fingers on her skin. Something inside her roared to life. Not a wolf, but something deeper. She set down the quill. "No." Her mother's grip tightened. "Roza!" "I said no." She stood, grabbed her cloak from the peg. Her father looked up from his whiskey bottle, bleary-eyed and useless. He wouldn't stop her. He never stopped anything anymore. "You ungrateful little bitch!" Her mother's voice rose, shrill. "You're wolfless. You're nothing. At least Grendor sees enough value to pay for the privilege of bedding you." "Then I'll be nothing somewhere else." She walked out into the night. Behind her, she heard Grendor's voice barking orders. Of course he'd anticipated she might run. Men like him always did. The forbidden forest loomed at the edge of the village. Stories said wolves who entered never came out. That ancient magic warped reality within its borders. Roza plunged into it without hesitation. Branches caught at her cloak and hair. Behind her, torchlight bobbed between trees. "There! I see her!" She ran faster, boots slipping on wet leaves. Then the ground changed beneath her feet, dirt giving way to smooth stone. Before her, rising from the earth like ancient bones, stood 4 massive archways, each carved from different colored stone: obsidian, crystal, silver, and something that seemed to shift between all colors and none. They formed a perfect circle in a clearing she'd never seen before, pulsing with light. Well, finally. Roza spun. A woman stood in the center, or something that had once been a woman, translucent, flickering like a candle flame, dressed in robes made of starlight and shadow. "Who are you?" "I am Anastasia, keeper of the 4 doors, and you, Roza Morvain, are a dimensional anchor." The woman circled her slowly. "There are 4 universes connected to this point in space and time. In each, one, a version of you exists, and in each one you are mated to an alpha. Your soul resonates across dimensions, girl. You don't have a wolf in this universe because your power was distributed across 4 realities. You're not broken. You're diluted. Behind her, Grendor burst into the clearing, 3 guards flanking him. There you are, you little bitch. I paid good coin. These portals lead to those 4 universes, Anastasia continued, as if he didn't exist. Step through and you'll discover who you truly are. Each alpha has bonded with you in their own way, but you can only belong to one universe permanently. To escape this life and claim your true destiny, you must journey through each portal, experience each bond, and choose which universe you'll anchor yourself to forever. And if I refuse, then you'll return to your village and spend the rest of your life beneath him. Anastasia gestured at Grendor. Or you'll stay here, trapped between worlds like me. The portal's activated when you touch them. There's no closing them now. Grendor's hand went to his knife. Thought you could run? You're mine. Bought and... Roza stepped through the obsidian portal. The world dissolved into fire and sand, and Grendor's voice cut off mid-word. Part 2. Universe 1. The Warlord. Heat slammed into her like a fist. Roza staggered onto red sand that stretched endlessly under twin suns blazing in a copper sky. In the distance, a palace complex dominated the horizon, its walls the color of dried blood, towers crowned with gold. A hand clamped around her wrist with bruising force. She yelped and found herself staring up at Alpha Draxian Vale. Tall, broad-shouldered, skin like burnished bronze, eyes like black opals holding no mercy. Scars crisscrossed his bare chest. He wore crimson silk wrapped low on his hips, gold cuffs on his wrists, and a crown that looked forged from defeated enemies' weapons. Running again? His voice was desert wind over sand. I should chain you to my bed and be done with it, wife. Wife. Memories flooded her, fragmented but sharp, being dragged before him in chains after her father's kingdom fell. Alpha Draxian circling her like a shark. You'll do, pretty enough. Royal blood. You'll bear strong pups and look good displayed at court. The mating ceremony performed in front of his entire court to establish dominance. He'd stripped her publicly, methodically. The platform high enough that the entire throne room could watch. Drums pounding as he took her, hands rough and demanding, designed to display ownership rather than create pleasure, though her body had betrayed her with its response. The wolf she had in this universe, yes, here she had one, had howled in unwilling recognition when he'd bitten her shoulder to seal the bond. Afterward, he'd presented her to his court with his scent all over her, his mark visible, his seed still wet on her thighs. My Luna, my trophy. Touch her and die. The memories snapped into focus. This wasn't her life, or rather it was one possible version, one universe where she'd been a princess, where her kingdom had fallen, where she'd become spoils of war. I wasn't running, Roza heard herself say. I was walking in the gardens. Draxion's laugh was harsh. Semantics. You know the law. Lunas do not leave the palace grounds without their alpha's permission. He pulled her closer, and despite everything, her traitorous body responded. He smelled of sandalwood and steel and old blood, and the bond between them pulsed with dark magnetic energy that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with power. His hand gripped her jaw, forcing her to meet his eyes. You've been distant lately, pulling away, flinching when I touch you. His thumb pressed against her lower lip. Have I been too soft with you? Do you need reminding of your place? And there was the core of it. To Draxion, love was possession. Affection was ownership. Come. He began walking, dragging her toward the palace. The sun ceremony begins within the hour. I require you on display. On display. Not beside him. Not with him. On display. Like a weapon or a crown. The palace interior was cool corridors and sun-drenched courtyards. Servants in white linen bowed as Draxion passed, their eyes carefully avoiding Roza. She caught glimpses of other women, concubines or lesser wives, watching from behind screens, faces painted with coal and resignation. This was a world built on conquest. Women here were trophies. Draxion led her to his private chambers. The bed was enormous, draped in scarlet silk. The walls were hung with weapons, swords, spears, axes, each one a trophy from a defeated enemy. A map dominated one wall, showing his empire in red ink, spreading like a stain. He poured wine from a crystal decanter. "You'll wear the gold tonight," he said, gesturing to a gown on the bed, cloth of gold so heavy it would be difficult to walk in. "And the rubies. I want everyone to see what I've claimed." A collar of rubies lay beside the dress, more shackle than necklace. "What if I want more than this?" The words came out before she could stop them. Draxion turned, goblet in hand, studied her with those merciless black eyes. "More than being queen of an empire?" "More than being property." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he moved toward her, slow and predatory, set the goblet down with careful precision. His hand traced the scar on her shoulder, his mating mark, raised and permanent. "I took you in conquest," he said quietly, and there was something almost like honesty in his voice. "I claimed you because you were beautiful and royal and because I could. That's what alphas do in this world, Roza. We take. We own. We dominate. It's how I was raised. It's how I survived." His hand moved to cup her face, his touch almost gentle. "I don't beat you. I provide for you. I've killed 3 men who spoke disrespectfully about you. In this world, that's as close to love as you'll find." And that was the tragedy. He wasn't lying. He wasn't even being cruel. This was genuinely the best he could offer. Possession without brutality. Ownership without sadism. He'd been shaped by violence since childhood, had learned that love was weakness, and softness meant death. He would never understand that there were other ways to be strong. "I can't be what you need," Roza said softly. Draxion's expression hardened. "What I need is an obedient Luna who understands her place." "Then you need someone else." She felt it then, the pull of the obsidian portal calling her back. But before she could fade, Draxion's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, this time hard enough to hurt. "You don't get to leave. You're mine." "No," Roza said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I was your trophy, your war prize. But I was never really yours because you never actually wanted me. You wanted what I represented. The satisfaction of owning something rare." His grip tightened. For a moment she thought he might fight the portal's pull, but then something shifted in his expression. Not quite understanding, but maybe the first shadow of it. He released her wrist. "In another life," he said quietly, "I might have been different. But this is the life I have, and this is who I am. Go then, find your soft alpha who'll treat you like an equal. See how long you survive in a world that values strength above all else." The chamber dissolved around her. The last thing she saw was him standing alone in his weapon-filled room, surrounded by symbols of conquest, but utterly, devastatingly lonely. The clearing resolved. Roza gasped, her wrist aching. And when she looked down, there were bruises. Actual bruises that had crossed dimensional barriers. Anastasia appeared beside her. "You've experienced your first alpha. 3 more to go before you can rank them fairly and choose." He wanted a possession, not a partner, Roza said, rubbing her bruised wrist. "Perhaps. But you have 3 more universes to explore before you can judge." Anastasia gestured to the remaining portals. Universe 2 awaits. Alpha Corvain will heal you and save you, and give you everything you need to become whole. And in doing so, he'll break himself apart piece by piece. Roza looked at the crystal archway glowing with soft turquoise light. She could smell salt and flowers, could feel warmth radiating from it. She stepped through, and the world exploded into light and the overwhelming presence of emotions that weren't her own. Part 3, Universe 2. The empath. Warmth enveloped her. Roza opened her eyes to a riot of green, palm fronds, hanging vines, flowers in impossible colors. She stood on white sand soft as powder, and before her, the ocean stretched in shades of turquoise and sapphire. The sky was cloudless blue. The air tasted of salt and tropical fruit. But the most striking thing was the light. Everyone in this universe, and she could see people in the distance, moving along the beach, glowed with a soft aura. Some burned bright gold, others cool blue, still others in shades of pink or green or violet. The light pulsed and shifted with their emotions. In this world, feelings were impossible to hide. Roza looked down at herself and gasped. Her own body was surrounded by swirling colors, confusion gray, mixing with curiosity gold, fear violet threading through determination orange, grief blue bleeding into hope pink. All her accumulated pain from Universe 1 visible, undeniable, and on display. She wore simple clothes, a turquoise wrap around her torso and waist, feet bare, hair loose and sun-streaked. No corsets, no heavy gowns, just skin and cloth and honest emotion written in light. The memories flowed in, gentler than before. This was a place of community and openness, where alphas weren't rulers or warriors but healers and protectors. Emotions were sacred here, shared freely, celebrated rather than hidden. Alpha Corvain Ellis was this island's guardian, an empath whose gift allowed him to feel others' emotions, to soothe pain and amplify joy. His aura was usually pure white gold, the color of unconditional love and acceptance. He'd found Roza when she'd first arrived in this universe, brought here by dimensional accident. She'd been broken then, full of trauma, the pack's rejection, her father's cruelty, the wolfless shame. Her aura had been black with despair. Corvain had healed her, not with magic or medicine, but with patient, endless compassion. He'd sat with her through panic attacks, his hands gentle, his gift absorbing the sharp edges of her terror. He'd held her when nightmares woke her screaming, taking the horror into himself so she could sleep. He'd listened to her story, all of it, the worst parts, without judgment. "You're not broken," he'd said, his luminous golden brown eyes holding hers. "You were broken by your world. There's a difference. You're not defective, Roza. You were wounded, and wounds can heal." He'd spent months helping her heal, teaching her to meditate, to breathe, to recognize when panic was rising, showing her that emotions weren't weaknesses but signals to be honored. And somewhere in that healing, they'd fallen in love. Their first kiss had been sweet and tentative, both of them smiling, their auras intertwining in spirals of pink and gold. The bond had formed naturally over weeks, strengthening with each touch, each honest conversation, each moment of shared vulnerability. The mating ceremony had been a community celebration on this beach at sunset, witnessed by the entire island. They'd merged not just bodies, but souls, their auras intertwining as they joined under the open sky, the ocean providing rhythm. The pleasure had been overwhelming, spiritual. Every thrust had sent their combined aura exploding outward in cascades of color. Every cry had been shared between them, his pleasure amplifying hers, her joy feeding his. When it was done, Corvain had pressed his lips to her shoulder and whispered, I will carry your pain for eternity, if that's what love requires. She'd thought it was poetry. Now she understood it was prophecy. The memories solidified. She'd been here for 8 months. 8 months of healing, of learning to laugh again, of discovering joy. 8 months of watching Corvain's aura slowly darken. Roza! She turned to see him running down the beach toward her. Corvain was beautiful, luminous golden-brown skin, long dark hair bound back with shells, eyes that held oceans of compassion. His aura should have been pure white gold. Instead, it was threaded with darkness. Violet and gray and sickly green mixed through the gold like infection. His aura looked diseased. Because it was. Because he'd been absorbing her pain. And the pain of everyone else on the island for so long that it was destroying him from the inside. He reached her and swept her into his arms, spinning her once before setting her down and pressing his forehead to hers in the island's traditional greeting. I felt you disappear from the emotional grid. You were just gone from my senses. Where did you go? His aura pulsed concern blue mixed with relief green, but underneath she could see threads of darkness, pulsing, despair black, pain red, toxic shame brown, colors that didn't belong in a healer's aura. I don't know, Roza said. I'm here now. You're troubled. His aura shifted to deeper concern, and his hands moved to her shoulders. I can feel it. There's fear in you, and grief that doesn't belong to this moment. So much pain, Roza. What happened? Let me help. And that was the gift and curse of this bond. Corvain loved her completely, saw her fully, accepted every broken piece. But his empathic gift meant he didn't just witness her pain. He absorbed it, took it into himself, carried it so she didn't have to. She could feel it happening now. The confusion and fear and grief from Universe 1 began to drain away, flowing from her into him like water finding its level. Relief flooded her, sweet and immediate and addictive. But when she looked at Corvain's aura, she saw it darken further. The threads of violet and gray spreading, consuming more gold. She could actually see the moment her pain entered him, watched his aura flicker and dim. Stop, she said, pulling back. Don't take my pain. It's what I do, love. It's who I am. He smiled, but there were lines of strain around his eyes. His aura pulsed with satisfaction even as it darkened, because easing her suffering felt right to him, felt like purpose, even as it destroyed him. Your happiness is mine. Your peace is my peace. I can't feel you hurting and do nothing. In the months they'd been together, Corvain had absorbed so much trauma that it was killing him. She could see it in her memories, the way his aura had been pure gold when they'd met, how it had started darkening within weeks. She'd watched him wake from nightmares that weren't his, her nightmares, absorbed from her psyche. She'd seen him flinch at sudden movements, developing reflexes against violence he'd never experienced. She'd noticed how he sometimes looked at his hands as if they were foreign, how he'd started avoiding mirrors because seeing his darkening aura was too painful. He was carrying her pain, her fear, her shame from 20 years of being called worthless, her brutalization from Draxion. All of it absorbed into his empathic soul, and it was killing him. Corvain, we need to talk about your aura. His smile faltered. It's fine, just a little tired. It's not fine. It's infected, poisoned. Roza grabbed his hands. Your gift is destroying you. Every time you absorb someone's pain, you damage yourself. Your aura used to be pure gold. Now it's threaded with darkness spreading every day. How long until there's no gold left? He looked away, toward the ocean, and his aura pulsed with sorrow so deep it made her chest ache. I know, he whispered, but I can't stop. When I feel your pain, I have to ease it. It's not a choice, Roza. It's as natural as breathing. To feel you hurt and do nothing, I can't. I physically can't. My gift won't let me. Then I have to leave. No. He turned back, his eyes desperate, his aura flashing abandonment black so intense it made her stumble. We'll find another way. I'll learn to shield myself better. There is no other way. Your gift doesn't have an off switch, and I'm not capable of never feeling pain. Every time I'm sad or scared or hurt, you'll absorb it. And eventually there won't be any gold left, just accumulated darkness. She could see it happening even now. Her grief about leaving was flowing into him, darkening his aura further, and his expression showed both pain and terrible satisfaction, because easing her suffering felt right, even as it destroyed him. Corvain, listen. Roza cupped his face. I've been to another universe. I've experienced another bond. Draxion wanted to own me. Brutal possession. His love was honest but cruel. She felt tears streaming down her face. And you want to heal me. Selfless devotion. Your love is pure but unsustainable. Because the foundation is your slow destruction. You deserve better than slow suicide. I don't know how to stop being what I am, he admitted, his aura flickering with helpless honesty. Then you need to learn. Without me. Because as long as I'm here, you'll keep absorbing my pain instead of learning to let people carry their own burdens. She felt herself beginning to fade, the tropical beach dissolving. You need to understand that healing doesn't mean taking someone's darkness into yourself. It means teaching them to process their own darkness until it transforms into something bearable. His hands tightened on her shoulders. I love you. Doesn't that matter? It counts for everything, Roza said through tears. But sometimes love isn't enough if it destroys the people who share it. Sometimes the most loving thing is to leave, so you can learn to survive without me. The beach vanished. The last thing she saw was Corvain dropping to his knees in white sand, his aura exploding into a supernova of grief that burned so bright it hurt to witness. Pure, unfiltered agony that he couldn't absorb from himself, couldn't ease, couldn't transform. His aura looked like a dying star. Then she was back in the clearing, and she collapsed. Roza sobbed into her hands. Draxion's bruises still marked her wrist, and now Corvain's pain lived in her chest, a wound that wouldn't close. Anastasia didn't speak for a long moment. When Roza finally looked up, the ancient Luna's form was flickering with something that looked like tears. 2 alphas now, Anastasia said softly. 2 different bonds, 2 different lessons. Tell me, how does Corvain compare to Draxion? Roza couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, he's better. Better than Draxion's brutality. Corvain loved me right. He saw my broken pieces and loved me anyway. He healed me without trying to control me. He gave without expecting anything in return. So he ranks higher? Yes. But the bond itself was flawed. Not in how he loved me, but in the mechanism. His gift made it impossible for our relationship to be sustainable. He would have destroyed himself loving me. She looked at Anastasia. How do I compare healthy love with an unhealthy foundation to unhealthy love with... What? Honest brutality? That's what you need to answer when you do your final ranking. Anastasia moved closer. 2 more universes, 2 more alphas, and these last 2 will challenge everything you've learned. Roza pushed herself to her feet. What's next? Universe 3, Alpha Vareth Solin. His world is centuries ahead of all the others. They've solved the problems that plague the rest. Violence, inequality, scarcity, power imbalances. Alphas and Lunas are true equals there. You'll be happy with him, Roza. Genuinely, sustainably happy. Then what's the catch? The catch is that Universe 3 is dying. It's the newest, least anchored in dimensional space. When you activated these portals, you destabilized all dimensional barriers. But Universe 3 is taking the most damage. It's starting to collapse. Roza's stomach dropped. How long? Days, maybe. The technology there is advanced enough that they might slow it, but they can't stop it. Choosing Universe 3 means watching an entire civilization fade. And Universe 4? Anastasia's expression grew complicated. Universe 4 is where it all began. Alpha Kairos Valdrin. The original Alpha you bonded with before reality fractured into 4 separate worlds. Your bond with him was so powerful it literally broke the universe. He's been searching for you ever since. Across dimensions, across millennia. He's the most powerful Alpha you'll meet. The most intense. The most absolute. And probably the most dangerous. Yes, but also possibly the most right. Anastasia met her eyes. These last 2 will show you partnership with an expiration date and overwhelming passion that might consume everything. Then you'll choose. Roza looked at the silver portal glowing like a captured star, then at the shifting portal pulsing with primal energy. Universe 3 first, she decided. Let me experience partnership before I face overwhelming passion. She approached the silver archway. She could smell something clean and electric, could hear the hum of advanced technology. She stepped through, and the world shifted into light and progress and everything she'd never known she was missing. Part 4. Universe 3. The partner. Roza gasped as her senses adjusted. They were on a platform thousands of feet in the air, surrounded by gleaming towers made of crystal and steel, and something that pulsed with inner glow. Technology so advanced it looked like magic. Flying vehicles streamed between buildings in organized patterns. The air tasted clean, filtered. The light was natural, but somehow better. Full spectrum, life-giving. This was a world that had conquered gravity, scarcity, violence. "Welcome home," said a voice beside her, warm and familiar. Roza turned to find Alpha Vareth Solon watching her with concern and relief. He was tall, built for strength rather than aggression, and his eyes were the warmest shade of amber, like honey backlit by sunset. He wore clothes impossibly advanced, sleek silver fabric that shifted with his movements. His expression was pure, unguarded relief. No possessiveness, no dominance, just genuine happiness at seeing her safe. "Vareth," she breathed. The memories flooded in, but they felt different. Not imposed, but like remembering something temporarily forgotten. They'd met at a research symposium 5 years ago. She'd been presenting work on dimensional theory. He'd been in the audience, and during Q&A he'd challenged one of her conclusions. Not rudely, not condescendingly. With genuine curiosity and a competing hypothesis that was actually better than hers. They'd argued for 3 hours after the panel, drawing equations on napkins, attracting a crowd of researchers. When they'd finally reached synthesis, they'd both started laughing. "Buy you a drink?" he'd asked. "I feel like we just solved something important." "Only if you let me buy the second round," she'd countered. "Seems fair since you corrected my math." The friendship had grown over months of messages and video calls and occasional meetings. They'd discovered shared interests beyond physics, old music, terrible jokes, long hikes, conversations that lasted until dawn. The attraction had developed slowly, carefully. One night after working on a joint paper until 3 a.m., they'd looked up from their screens at the same moment and just seen each other. The kiss that followed had been tentative and sweet. "That was terrible," Roza had said, grinning. They'd bumped teeth. "Objectively awful," Vareth had agreed. "Want to try again?" The second kiss had been better. The third had been perfect. The courtship had continued for another year, not because they were uncertain, but because they both valued taking time to be sure. They'd met each other's families, integrated into each other's friend groups, had countless discussions about life goals and values and partnership. The bonding ceremony had been their own design, not imposed by tradition, but crafted for who they were. They'd written their own vows, chosen their own witnesses. "I choose you," Vareth had said, holding both her hands. "And don't even dare think that it's because fate ordained it or because some cosmic force demands it. It's simply because I've seen who you are in 1,000 moments, and I want to see 1,000,000 more. I choose to be your partner, your equal, your friend and lover and co-researcher. Every single day I'll wake up and choose you again." "I choose you too," she'd replied, tears streaming. "And it's not because I need you to complete me, but because I'm already whole and you're whole, and I think two whole people choosing each other is more powerful than any destiny." The consummation had been explosive precisely because it came from equality. Two people meeting with complete honesty. No games, no power plays, just desire and laughter and pleasure that came from truly knowing your partner. Every touch was negotiated wordlessly. Every movement mutual. When it was done, Vareth had whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." Not, "You're mine." Just gratitude for her autonomous choice. That had been 3 years ago. 3 years of partnership, of shared research and separate projects, of arguments that ended in resolution or agreement to disagree. The memories crystallized. This was different from every other universe. Here she wasn't a trophy or a patient or someone to be healed. Here she was just herself. A scientist, a thinker, a complete person bonded to another complete person. "I've missed you," Vareth said, pulling her into an embrace that felt like safety without possession. "When you disappeared, when I couldn't sense you through the bond," his arms tightened briefly before relaxing, "I thought I'd lost you." Roza melted into his embrace, breathing in his scent, clean and warm, familiar. No sandalwood and steel like Draxion, no salt and flowers like Corvain, just Vareth, just home. "Tell me what happened," he said gently, pulling back to look at her face. "The dimensional readings went haywire. Where did you go?" So she told him. About the portals, about Anastasia, about Draxion's brutality and Corvain's self-destructive devotion. Vareth listened without interrupting, his expression shifting through concern and understanding, and carefully controlled hurt. "2 alphas," he said quietly when she finished. "2 bonds, 2 versions of you mated to different males, and I'm just one of them, number 3 in the sequence." "You're not just anything," Roza said fiercely. "Vareth, you're—" "But I'm not the only one, and there's still one more universe, one more alpha." His voice was gentle, without accusation. "Which alpha is in Universe 4? Roza hesitated, then answered honestly. "Kairos, the original alpha I bonded with before reality fractured." "Tell me about him." She told him what Anastasia had revealed, about the primal universe, about Kairos's overwhelming presence, about a bond so powerful it had literally broken reality apart. "A bond strong enough to fracture dimensions," Vareth said slowly. Theoretically, that should be impossible. The energy required would... He stopped, his scientific mind racing through calculations. Unless the bond itself became a dimensional anchor point, creating a feedback loop that amplified until reality couldn't contain it. Even now, even hearing about another alpha, Vareth's first instinct was to understand the mechanics. Not from jealousy, but because his brain couldn't help but analyze interesting problems. That was so fundamentally him that Roza felt her chest crack open with love. "But there's something else," Vareth continued, his amber eyes focusing on her. Something you haven't said yet. This universe, Universe 3, it's in danger, isn't it? Of course he'd figured it out. Vareth was brilliant. Yes, she whispered. When I activated the portals, I destabilized all dimensional barriers. Universe 3 is the newest, least anchored. Anastasia says it's starting to collapse. Vareth's expression shifted to something resigned but unsurprised. How long? Days, maybe a week. She says the only way to stop the collapse is for me to choose one permanently, to anchor myself so the others can exist independently without strain. Then stay here. Choose us. His voice was firm but not demanding. We'll fight the instability together. And watch everyone die because I was too selfish to let go? Roza grabbed his hands. Vareth, Anastasia says if I choose Universe 3, it might stabilize temporarily. But the collapse is already too advanced. We'd have days, maybe weeks before dimensional instability tears everything apart. I can't build my future on a foundation that's crumbling. Vareth closed his eyes, and she felt their bond pulse with his grief and frustration and terrible understanding. When he opened them, tears tracked down his cheeks. I know, he said quietly. I know you can't choose us if it means watching everything collapse. I know I couldn't make that choice either, which means I can't ask you to. That's the curse of finding someone who shares your values. I can't even argue because you're making the morally correct choice, and I agree with you. He pulled her against his chest. They stood like that, holding each other while their world literally trembled. There's something I need to show you first, Vareth said. Before you make your final choice, I need you to understand what you'd be giving up. He took her hand, not pulling, offering, and led her through the sky city toward their home. The apartment was everything she remembered. Spacious, filled with light. Books scattered on surfaces, half-finished projects, photos of their travels. Evidence of a shared life, built together. We're on the verge of a breakthrough, Vareth said, gesturing to their workspace where screens displayed equations, hers alongside his. Stable dimensional travel. If we succeed, we could explore other realities safely, expand knowledge for its own sake. We could spend our lives discovering impossibilities together. He showed her their friend group, scientists and artists, who gathered weekly for dinner and debate. Showed her community centers and schools and hospitals, civilization advanced enough that suffering was minimal, and opportunity universal. Parks and art installations, spaces dedicated to beauty. This is what we've built, Vareth said quietly. Not just you and me, but all of us. A society where alphas and lunas are genuine partners, where power is shared, where everyone has autonomy and freedom to become whoever they want. It took centuries to build. He turned to face her, amber eyes bright with unshed tears. And it's all going to disappear because reality can't sustain 4 universes indefinitely. I understand that. I accept it. But I need you to understand what you're giving up before you choose. Roza felt her throat close. Because he was right. This universe was miraculous. The life they'd built was everything. Partnership without possession. Love without domination. Mutual respect and shared dreams. And she was going to have to watch it disappear. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. Vareth, you're perfect. We're perfect. If I could choose any universe based solely on where I'd be happiest, it would be this one. You treat me like an equal. You respect my autonomy. Her voice broke. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for. But, he said it gently, already knowing, but I can't build my happiness on the ashes of billions of lives. And more than that, I can't choose a universe that's fundamentally unstable. Even if we could somehow evacuate everyone, this reality is collapsing. Choosing it means choosing something temporary. Something dying. Vareth nodded slowly. So this is goodbye. This is goodbye. He pulled her close, and they stood together in their apartment overlooking the sky city, holding each other while their world flickered around them. Roza memorized everything. The feel of his arms, the sound of his heartbeat, the scent of home. If you choose another universe, Vareth said against her hair, if you find happiness somewhere else, promise me you'll remember this. Remember that it's possible for alphas and lunas to be genuine equals. Remember you deserve partnership, not possession. Don't settle for less. I promise. And know this? He pulled back to look at her, amber eyes fierce. In every timeline, in every universe, in every version of reality where we exist, my soul chooses yours. Not because fate demands it, but because you're extraordinary and brilliant and kind, and knowing you has been the greatest gift of my life. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of everything they were about to lose. Roza kissed him back, pouring 3 years of love into the contact. When they broke apart, both were crying. I love you, Roza said, in every way that matters. I love you. I love you too, Vareth replied. And I'm grateful we had this, even if it's ending. Having known you, having been your partner, it was worth it. The portal was pulling at her now, stronger than before. Roza felt herself beginning to fade. The last thing she saw was Vareth standing alone in their shared workspace, surrounded by evidence of their life together, his amber eyes following her as she disappeared. He didn't rage or beg. He just watched her go with the same respect for her autonomy that had defined their relationship. And somehow that made it hurt more. The clearing resolved, but it looked different, darker, the portals flickering wildly, cracks spreading through stone. Reality itself was straining. Roza collapsed to her knees, sobbing. The weight of accumulated grief was crushing. 3 universes, 3 loves, 3 losses, Draxion's bruises, Corvain's pain, and now Vareth's perfect partnership slipping through her fingers. Anastasia appeared, looking more solid, as if dimensional instability was affecting her too. 3 alphas now, she said softly. 3 different bonds. Tell me, how does Vareth compare to the others? Roza couldn't speak for a long moment. Finally, he's the best, the healthiest, the most sustainable. Everything was right. Genuine partnership, mutual respect, shared power, individual autonomy. We were equals. So he ranks first? I don't know. Roza looked up, tears streaming. How do I compare him to the others? He's better in terms of the relationship itself. But his universe is dying. Does that matter? Should I rank the alpha or the circumstances? That's what you'll need to decide. Anastasia's voice was gentle. You have 1 more universe, 1 more alpha, and then you'll have all the data you need to make your final ranking and your final choice. Roza pushed herself to her feet, her body shaking. She looked at the final portal, shifting colors, pulsing with primal energy that made her skin prickle. Universe 4, Alpha Kairos, the original bond that had broken reality itself. Tell me the truth, she said to Anastasia. What happens if I choose Universe 4? If I go back to Kairos? Anastasia's expression grew complicated. All 4 universes merge back into one. Draxion, Corvain, and Vareth, they cease to exist as separate beings. Their memories, experiences, individual identities, all absorbed back into prime reality as echoes rather than actualized lives. They won't die exactly, they'll just unbecome, as if the fracture never happened. And Kairos? Kairos remains. Because he's the original, the alpha you bonded with before reality fractured. He's been searching for you for approximately 3,000 years, depending on how time flows differently. He's driven half mad by your absence, consumed by need to complete the bond that was interrupted. 3,000 years? Roza felt sick. Time moves differently in Universe 4. It's the most primal universe, closest to raw creation. What felt like months to you was millennia to him after you were torn apart. Anastasia moved closer. He's not the same Alpha you remember. Isolation and longing have changed. Him sharpened him into something more intense. Your bond with him will be overwhelming, all-consuming, the kind of connection poets write about and priests call divine madness. That sounds terrifying. It is. But it's also the most powerful bond possible. You and Kairos together, you're not just mates. You're a matched set, two halves that were never meant to be separated. When you consummate that bond fully, reality itself will reshape to accommodate you. You'll be sovereign over Universe 4, powerful beyond measure. And everyone else just disappears? Draxion and Corvain and Vareth get erased? Reabsorbed. They become dreams rather than realities. Anastasia's voice was gentle but firm. I won't lie. It's a form of death. They won't suffer, won't know what they've lost. But from your perspective, you'll be choosing to unmake 3 lives to reclaim 1. Roza looked at the shifting portal, felt its pull. She could sense Kairos on the other side, feeling his presence like a storm about to break. 3,000 years of searching. I need to meet him, Roza said finally. I need to experience Universe 4 fully before I can make my final choice. I need to understand what I'd be claiming, and what I'd be destroying. Are you sure? Anastasia asked. Once you step through that final portal, once you experience the full force of your bond with Kairos, it will be almost impossible to walk away. That kind of connection rewrites you at a soul-deep level. You might not be able to choose anyone else after, even if your logic tells you to. I still need to know, Roza said firmly. I can't make an informed choice if I'm avoiding the most powerful option. And I can't rank all 4 alphas fairly if I haven't experienced all 4 bonds. Anastasia studied her, then nodded slowly. Very well. But remember, when you step through that portal, you're not just meeting an alpha. You're meeting destiny itself. And destiny doesn't take kindly to rejection. Roza approached the shifting archway. It pulsed with energy that felt primal and dangerous and utterly consuming. She could smell smoke and ozone and could feel heat like dragon's breath. She took a deep breath and stepped through. The world exploded into elemental chaos. Part 5, Universe 4, the absolute fire and ice, earth and sky, every element at once, raw and unfiltered. Roza gasped as sheer primal energy crashed into her like a physical force. There was no civilization here, no cities or structures, just pure nature in its most elemental form. Mountains erupting from lava seas, storms crackling with lightning across skies that shifted from day to night in heartbeats, forests that grew and died in minutes. Raw chaos of creation itself. This was the universe before mortals shaped it. Before laws or societies. Before anyone decided reality should be tamed. And standing in the center, commanding it with presence alone, was Alpha Kairos Valdrin. He was massive. Not just tall, but somehow larger than physical space should allow, as if he took up more room in reality than his body accounted for. His hair was black as midnight and moved like it was alive. His eyes were molten silver. And when they landed on Roza, she felt seen down to her atoms, every secret and fear and desire laid bare. He wore nothing but leather pants, his chest bare and marked with scars that glowed faintly. Not wounds, but marks of elemental force absorbed and survived. His muscles moved under bronze skin, like continents shifting, and the air around him literally warped with heat and pressure. and his face was twisted with such longing and rage and desperate love that Roza felt her knees buckle. "You came back." His voice was thunder rolling across mountains, earthquakes given sound. "After 3,000 years, after every universe I've torn apart searching, you finally came back to me." The memories slammed into her, no longer locked away. The original timeline. Universe Prime, before reality fractured. She'd been different then, not wolfless, but something wilder, more primal. A wolf shifter born during a celestial convergence, touched by elemental magic, rare and powerful. And Kairos, Alpha Kairos Valdrin, lord of the elemental wastes, the strongest alpha in a world where strength was the only law. Not through cruelty like Draxian, but through sheer, overwhelming power that bent reality around him. They'd met when she'd wandered into his territory during a full moon run. She'd been hunting, wild and free, accidentally crossed into lands claimed by an alpha so powerful that other wolves avoided them entirely. He'd appeared before her in a shimmer of heat and ozone. "You're trespassing." "I didn't see a border," she'd replied, adrenaline making her bold. "Because my borders are everywhere my power reaches, which is everywhere." But his eyes had tracked her with interest. "You're not afraid." "Should I be?" "Most wolves are. Most creatures are." He'd moved closer, circling her, and she'd felt reality bend around him. Trees leaning away, air growing thicker. Her own wolf sitting up inside her, with recognition that felt like destiny and disaster. "But you're different. I can feel it. There's power in you. Raw, untapped, waiting." "I'm nobody special." Liar. He'd smiled, and it had been terrifying and beautiful. "You're the most special thing I've encountered in centuries, and I'm going to have you. Not, I'd like to court you. Not, may I see you again? Just absolute certainty that she would be his because he'd decided. She should have run. Instead, she'd challenged him. "That's not how bonds work. You can't just decide someone belongs to you. Watch me." The courtship, if it could be called that, had been intense and overwhelming. He'd appeared everywhere she went, had filled her territory with gifts, killed game, rare flowers, stones humming with power, had fought off 3 other alphas who'd tried to claim her, leaving their bodies as warnings. She'd been furious. "I'm not property to be fought over." "Then tell me to stop." He'd stood before her, chest heaving from battle, blood not his own splattered across his skin. "Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me the bond isn't calling to you the same way it's consuming me." She couldn't. Because she did feel it. The pull, the recognition, the sense that her soul had been waiting without knowing it. It wasn't gentle or comfortable. It was volcanic, overwhelming, attraction that felt more like gravity than choice. They'd tried to fight it, had spent weeks avoiding each other, pretending the bond didn't exist, knowing that acting on something this intense would be dangerous. But bonds weren't rational. The night they'd finally given in, the world had changed. He'd come to her under a blood moon, his eyes molten with need. "I can't fight this anymore. I need you. All of you. Forever." "This is insane," she'd whispered, but her body was already responding, already moving toward him. "I know. I don't care." When they'd come together, it had been apocalyptic. Not gentle or tender, just raw, consuming need. They'd made it in a storm of pleasure and power that had literally torn holes in reality. Every thrust had sent shockwaves through the ground. Every cry had split the sky with lightning. Their combined energy had built and built until the universe itself couldn't contain it. And then it had shattered. Reality had fractured into 4 pieces, unable to hold the force of their bond. Roza had been flung into one fragment, the one where she was wolfless and worthless. Kairos had been trapped in the original universe, now empty of her, with only the memory of their incomplete bond burning through him like poison. He'd been searching for her ever since. The memories solidified. This bond wasn't like the others. It wasn't about conquest or healing or partnership. It was about completion. About two beings fundamentally incomplete without each other, torn apart by forces beyond their control, searching across dimensions for 3,000 years to be whole again. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember everything." Kairos's entire being seemed to glow with triumph and relief and desperate hope. "Then you understand. You're not whole without me, Roza. I'm not whole without you. We're two halves of something that should never have been separated." He moved toward her, and each step made the ground tremble. When he finally reached her, his hands came up to frame her face with a gentleness that contradicted his overwhelming presence. "I've spent 3,000 years searching for you," he said, his voice rough. 3,000 years of tearing open dimensional barriers, of feeling you just beyond my reach, of knowing you existed somewhere but not being able to find you. Do you know what that does to a being? To know your other half is out there, alive, but unreachable. His molten silver eyes held hers, and she could see the madness lurking beneath. Not insanity, but the kind of obsessive focus that came from having a single purpose for millennia. "I've killed for you. I've destroyed entire timelines trying to reach you. I've reshaped reality itself in my search. And now you're here. Finally. After everything." His thumb traced her cheekbone, and where he touched, her skin lit up with sensation. Not just physical pleasure, but soul-deep recognition. This was him. This was home. This was the other half of herself she'd been missing without knowing it. "Come back to me," Kairos whispered. "Choose us. Choose this. Let reality collapse back into its original form. Let us be whole again. I'll give you everything: power, devotion, a universe shaped to our will. You'll be my Luna, my equal, my other half. We'll be gods together, Roza. Nothing will ever separate us again." And gods help her. Roza wanted to say yes. The bond between them was pulling at her with gravitational force, trying to drag her into his orbit, trying to complete itself after 3,000 years of interruption. Every cell in her body was screaming that this was right. This was home. This was what she'd been searching for across 4 universes. But she forced herself to think past the bond's insistence, forced herself to remember the lessons. "Kairos," she said carefully, "I need to understand something. When we consummated our bond the first time, when reality fractured, why did it happen? What made our connection so powerful that it broke the universe?" His expression shifted, confusion flickering as if he'd never considered the question. "Because we're perfect together. Because our souls recognize each other at a fundamental level. Because the bond between us is the strongest possible connection two beings can share." "But why is it so strong? What makes it different?" "Because you're my other half." His voice rose, and the sky above crackled with lightning. "How can you even ask that? You feel it, don't you? The way everything in you is screaming to complete this bond?" "I do feel it," Roza admitted. "But Kairos, I've experienced 3 other bonds now, 3 other versions of connection. And you want to know what I learned?" She took his hands, held them even though the contact sent electricity through her entire body. "I learned that Draxian's possession wasn't love, that Corvain's selfless devotion was unsustainable martyrdom, and that Vareth's perfect partnership existed in a dying universe. So choose me," Kairos said desperately. "You've ruled out everyone else. Choose me. Choose us." "But I also learned something else." Roza's voice was steady now, certain. I learned that when we consummated our bond the first time, when reality fractured, it wasn't because our love was strong. It was because it was imbalanced. We consumed each other so completely that there was no room for anything else. No room for growth or individuality, or the possibility of being complete people separate from our bond. Understanding was dawning on Kairos's face, and with it, something that looked like grief. You're saying our bond is flawed. I'm saying it's too much. That what we have, what we could have again, it's two incomplete beings crashing together and calling it perfect. But perfect isn't sustainable if it requires the destruction of everything around it. I don't care about sustainability. Kairos's voice was anguished. I care about being whole, about finally having you back after 3,000 years of searching. You're asking me to care about balance and growth when all I've known for 3 millennia is the agony of your absence. I know. Roza felt tears burning her eyes. And that's exactly the problem. You've spent 3,000 years reducing yourself to a single focus. Find Roza. What happens after you've found me? What happens when the search is over and you have to figure out who you are beyond the alpha who lost his Luna? Kairos stared at her, and something like confusion crossed his face, as if he'd never considered the question. As if his entire identity had become so wrapped up in searching that he'd forgotten there was supposed to be a person underneath the obsession. I don't care about who I am without you, he said finally. I only care about who we are together. And that's the problem. Roza's voice broke. Kairos, if you really love me, if this bond is really about connection and not just obsession, then you'll understand why I can't choose this. Why I can't choose a bond so consuming that it breaks reality itself. No. Kairos's voice was raw, desperate. No, you can't. After 3,000 years, after everything, you can't walk away. I won't let you. You'll what? Roza met his eyes. Force me. Keep me here against my will. Prove that this bond is about possession after all. Kairos froze, his massive frame trembling. The air around them was warping with heat and pressure, the ground cracking beneath their feet, reality itself responding to his emotional turmoil. I would never force you, he whispered. Even now, even after 3,000 years, if you truly want to leave, I won't stop you. But I don't understand. His voice cracked. We're perfect together. We're meant to be. The universe itself brought you back to me. How can you feel what I feel? I know you feel it. And still choose to walk away. Roza felt the portal pulling at her, urgent and insistent. Anastasia was dragging her back, sensing that this universe was becoming unstable, that Kairos's emotions were literally tearing reality apart. I'm not walking away from you, she said quickly, needing him to understand. I'm walking away from a bond that's too powerful to be healthy. I'm walking away from the idea that finding your other half means you were only half a person to begin with. Then what are you walking toward? His hands tightened on hers, trying to anchor her through physical contact. If not me, if not us, what do you want, Roza? I want to be whole, by myself, without needing someone else to complete me. She felt herself beginning to fade, the primal universe dissolving. And I want you to learn the same thing. To figure out who Alpha Kairos Valdrin is when he's not defined by his search for me. To discover what brings you joy beyond reunion, what gives you purpose beyond completion. That's impossible. You're asking me to unmake 3,000 years of... I know, and I'm sorry. But Kairos... She met his eyes, let him see every ounce of grief and love and terrible certainty. You're the most powerful alpha I've met, the most primal, the most absolute. Our bond is the strongest possible connection two beings can share. And that's why you're ranked first. His expression shifted from despair to hope. Then stay. If I'm first, if we're the most powerful, being first doesn't mean being right. Roza's voice was firm, even as tears streamed down her face. You're ranked first in power, Kairos, but I'm not choosing you. I'm not choosing any of you. His expression shifted to complete devastation. No, you can't. I'm choosing myself. The words came out strong, certain, even as her heart broke. I'm choosing freedom. I'm choosing to be whole and sovereign and complete without needing any alpha, no matter how perfect, how powerful, how devoted, to define who I am. Roza! His voice was a howl that split the sky, that sent shockwaves through reality itself. He lunged for her, trying to hold her in this universe through sheer force of will, but she was already fading, already being pulled back. The last thing she saw was Kairos dropping to his knees in the elemental chaos, his massive frame shaking with sobs, his molten silver eyes watching her disappear for the second time in his existence. And the last thing she heard was his voice, breaking and desperate and still somehow full of terrible hope. I'll wait. I've waited 3,000 years. I'll wait 3,000 more. In every universe, in every timeline, I'll wait for you to come home. Then she was back in the clearing, and everything was falling apart. Part 6. The ranking. The clearing was disintegrating. All 4 portals were flickering wildly, their lights strobing, the stone archways cracking and crumbling. Reality itself was collapsing under the strain, unable to sustain the paradox. The ground beneath Roza's feet was splitting open, revealing swirling chaos underneath. Not earth or stone, but raw fabric of dimensional space. Roza collapsed in the center, her body shaking, her mind overwhelmed with 4 different bonds, 4 different loves, 4 different lessons. She could feel them all pulling at her. Draxion's brutality, Corvain's martyrdom, Vareth's dying universe, Kairos's overwhelming absoluteness, 4 alphas, 4 versions of love, 4 possible futures, and she had to rank them. Anastasia appeared beside her, her translucent form flickering urgently. You've experienced all 4. Now you must rank them, Roza, from worst to best, compare them honestly, and then choose. How? Roza looked up, tears streaming. How do I compare them when they're all so different? By understanding what each one taught you, by weighing the good against the bad, by asking yourself, if I had to live with one of these bonds forever, which would I choose? Which would destroy me? Which would sustain me? Which would let me be whole? Roza took a shaking breath and forced herself to think analytically. 4 alphas, 4 bonds. Draxion versus Corvain, she began, her voice steadying. Both were problematic. But Draxion's cage was honest brutality. I knew I was property. There was no pretense. I could fight against it clearly. She thought about Corvain's beach, the empathic healing that was killing him. Corvain's love was pure, selfless. He healed me, accepted me, gave without expecting anything in return. But his gift made the bond unsustainable. He would have destroyed himself loving me. She paused. That's better than Draxion's brutality, because at least Corvain loved me genuinely. The flaw was in the mechanism, not in his heart. So Corvain ranks higher than Draxion? Yes. Draxion is 4th, worst. Honest possession, but still possession. Corvain is 3rd. Pure love with an unsustainable foundation. Continue. Vareth versus both of them. Roza felt her chest tighten. Vareth was perfect. Genuine partnership, mutual respect, shared power. The bond was completely healthy. We were equals in every way. No possession, no martyrdom. So he ranks first. Yes. Vareth is first, the best, the healthiest. Everything I could want in a bond. Her voice broke. But his universe is dying. The bond is perfect, but the reality containing it is collapsing. That's not his fault. That's not a flaw in him or in us. That's circumstance. And finally, Anastasia said softly, Kairos. Roza looked at the shifting portal, still pulsing with primal energy. Kairos is the most powerful, the most intense, the most absolute. Our bond is the strongest possible connection two beings can share. When we're together, reality itself reshapes. So where does he rank? Second. Roza's voice was steady now. Kairos is second, more powerful than Werewolf, more intense, more primal. But Werewolf's bond was healthier. Kairos and I together, we break reality. We consume each other so completely that there's no room for anything else. We're not two whole people choosing partnership. We're two halves desperately trying to merge back into one, and the force of that merging destroys everything around us. She stood, looking at all four portals clearly now. Fourth place, Draxion. Brutal, honest possession. At least he never pretended it was anything other than ownership. Third place, Corvain. Pure, selfless love with an unsustainable foundation. Would have destroyed himself to save me. Second place, Kairos. Most powerful, most intense, most absolute. A bond so strong it breaks reality itself. Two halves trying to merge back into one. First place, Werewolf. Perfect partnership in a dying universe. Healthy bond, unstable reality. Everything is right except the circumstances. She turned to Anastasia. That's my ranking, from worst to best. But that doesn't tell you which one I'm choosing. No, because I'm not choosing any of them. Roza felt certainty settle into her bones. I've experienced 4 versions of love. 4 different ways of being claimed, wanted, needed. And I've learned that none of them, not even Werewolf's perfect partnership, not even Kairos's overwhelming completion, none of them are what I truly need. What do you need? To be whole, by myself, to exist as a complete person without needing any alpha to define me, complete me, save me, or claim me. Roza moved to the center of the clearing, feeling power building around her. I'm not choosing a universe. I'm creating a new option. The 4 portals flared with light, responding to her decision. You said I'm a dimensional anchor? Roza continued, her voice growing stronger. But you misunderstood what that meant. I don't anchor to a universe. I anchor the universes themselves. I hold them in place, keep them stable, allow them to exist independently without collapsing. Light exploded from her palms, 4 different colors, one for each universe, flowing out toward the crumbling portals. I choose myself, Roza said, her voice carrying across all 4 universes simultaneously. I choose freedom. I choose to exist in the space between worlds, holding them all in place but belonging fully to none of them. I'll visit each universe as I please. I'll maintain the dimensional barriers so you can all continue to exist independently. But I won't be anyone's Luna. Won't be owned or claimed or possessed by any alpha, no matter how perfect or powerful. That's impossible, came Draxion's voice from the obsidian portal. It shouldn't work, Werewolf agreed from the silver portal, though his expression was analytical rather than dismissive. The dimensional barriers were stabilizing. The portals stopped, flickering, their light growing steady and strong. The cracks in the clearing began to heal, reality reasserting itself in a new configuration. 4 separate universes, held together not by one woman's choice but by her refusal to choose. The 4 alphas began stepping through their portals, drawn by the same force. The need to witness this impossible choice, to understand what was happening. They stood in a circle around her. Draxion with his brutal honesty, Corvain with his empathic acceptance, Werewolf with his respectful partnership, and Kairos with his overwhelming absoluteness. 4 alphas all staring at her, all having to accept that she'd ranked them and rejected them all. "How is this possible?" Corvain whispered, his aura pulsing with confused acceptance. "Because she's not just an anchor." Anastasia's voice was filled with awe. "She's the anchor, the first, the original, the one who chose sovereignty over any bond, no matter how perfect." The light began to fade, and Roza stood in the center of the clearing, her body now semi-translucent like Anastasia, but more solid, more present. She existed between dimensions now, anchored to all of them, and none of them simultaneously. "I won't be anyone's full-time Luna," she said, looking at each alpha in turn. "But I'll exist in every universe, a shadow, a presence, a possibility. Each of you will feel me sometimes, remember me always, but none of you will own me completely." She turned to Draxion first. "I'll visit your desert kingdom and challenge your assumptions about power. Maybe I'll teach you that strength can be shared." To Corvain, "I'll walk your beaches and absorb some of your pain, but never enough to destroy you, just enough to share the burden. Maybe together we'll learn that healing doesn't require martyrdom." To Verith, "I'll collaborate with you on dimensional research, our partnership continuing across universes. And maybe I can help stabilize Universe 3 from outside, keep it from collapsing, give it the anchor it needs without requiring me to live there full-time." Finally, she turned to Kairos, who'd been silent throughout, his molten silver eyes tracking her every movement. "And you?" she said softly. "I'll meet you in storms and fire. Our bond will still be intense, still overwhelming, but it won't consume everything anymore. We'll collide in moments of perfect intensity, then separate again before we can break reality. Maybe that's what we were supposed to be all along. Not constantly joined, but periodically reconnecting in bursts of elemental chaos." Kairos stared at her, and slowly, so slowly, understanding dawned. "You're not leaving me. You're just refusing to let our bond define you." "Yes. I waited 3,000 years for you to come home." His voice was rough with emotion. "And now you're telling me home isn't a place or a person. It's you being sovereign over your own existence." "Yes." A long silence. Then impossibly Kairos smiled, the first, genuine smile that wasn't touched by madness or obsession. "I don't fully understand it, but I respect it. And I'll wait. Not desperately this time. Not as someone broken by loss, but as someone who knows you'll return when you're ready. Because you choose to, not because you need to." One by one, the other alphas acknowledged her choice. Draxion gave a warrior's salute, respectful, grudging, but genuine. Corvain's aura pulsed pure gold for the first time in months, acceptance and relief washing through him. Verith simply nodded, proud and heartbroken and happy all at once. And Kairos dropped to one knee, not in submission, but in recognition. "My Luna sovereign," he said quietly. "I'll wait for your return, not as a broken alpha desperate for completion, but as a whole being who chooses to share moments of intensity with another whole being." Anastasia appeared beside Roza, her translucent form shimmering. "You did it," the ancient Luna said, wonder in her voice. "You created a third option, not choosing a universe, not becoming a prisoner of the in-between, but existing as sovereign across all of them." "Will you join me?" Roza asked. "You don't have to be alone anymore, Anastasia. We can walk between worlds together. Companions, but not captors." For the first time in 1,000 years, Anastasia smiled with genuine joy. Yes, I think I'd like that." The clearing stabilized fully, the 4 portals now glowing with steady light. The dimensional barriers strong and healthy. Roza could feel herself existing in multiple places simultaneously, partially in each universe, fully in none of them, sovereign over her own existence in a way she'd never been before. I was Luna to 4 alphas in the 4 universes, she said, her voice echoing across dimensions. I ranked them from worst to best. 4th, Draxion, brutal possession. 3rd, Corvain, unsustainable martyrdom. 2nd, Kairos, overwhelming power that breaks reality. 1st, Vareth, perfect bond, dying universe. And in the end, I chose none of them. Because I learned that I was never broken. I was never incomplete. I was just waiting for permission to be whole. She looked at her hands, glowing with dimensional energy. At Anastasia standing beside her as companion rather than jailer. At the 4 alphas returning to their respective universes with new understanding. This is my story, Roza said. The Luna who chose herself. The woman who ranked 4 alphas and chose freedom over any bond no matter how powerful. And in the space between worlds, surrounded by portals to 4 different possible lives, she stood sovereign and free and absolutely, impossibly whole. Epilogue. Between worlds. The space between dimensions hummed with quiet energy. Roza sat on the edge of the clearing, her semi-translucent form flickering gently as she maintained the 4 portals. Anastasia sat beside her, no longer alone after 1,000 years, finally at peace. Do you ever regret it? The ancient Luna asked, choosing sovereignty over any of them? Roza thought about it, feeling the pull of each universe through the dimensional barriers she maintained. She could sense them all, Draxion in his throne room, Corvain on his beach, Vareth in their lab, Kairos in his elemental storms. No, she said finally, because I visit them all. I experience all 4 bonds in moments and fragments. I get to challenge Draxion's assumptions, heal with Corvain, research with Vareth, and collide with Kairos in moments of pure intensity. But you belong to none of them. I belong to myself. And that makes the moments I share with them meaningful because they're chosen, not obligated. They're gifts I give freely, not duties I perform from possession. Anastasia smiled. You've taught me something in these past weeks. That sovereignty doesn't mean isolation. That being free doesn't mean being alone. That you can maintain connections across universes without being trapped by any of them. We're not keepers, Roza said. We're anchors. We don't keep the universes imprisoned. We hold them stable so they can flourish independently. Through the silver portal, she felt Vareth calling to her. Not desperately, but invitingly. They had research to discuss, equations to solve, the collaborative partnership continuing across dimensions. Through the shifting portal, she felt Kairos waiting in a storm, not demanding, but ready. Knowing she'd come when she chose to, for moments of intensity that would no longer break reality because they were bounded by her sovereignty. Through all 4 portals, she felt the bonds pulling at her gently. Not chains, but connections. Not possession, but possibility. I think I'll visit Vareth today, Roza said standing. Help him with the dimensional stability equations. Then maybe Corvain's beach for sunset. And Kairos later, when the storms are strongest. And tomorrow? Tomorrow I'll challenge Draxion, heal with Corvain, research with Vareth, and dance with Kairos in the fire. She smiled. That's the beauty of being sovereign. I can experience all 4 bonds without being owned by any of them. Anastasia stood as well. I think I'll explore the other anchor points. See if there are more like us. More who chose sovereignty over bondage. We'll meet back here? Always. This is our home base. The clearing between worlds where no alpha can claim us, where we exist fully as ourselves. Roza looked at the 4 portals one last time before stepping through the silver archway toward Vareth's universe. 4 different loves, 4 different lessons, 4 alphas she'd ranked and respected but refused to be defined by. She was the Luna who chose herself. The woman who proved that sometimes the strongest bond is the one you have with yourself. The anchor who learned that holding space for others doesn't mean sacrificing your own sovereignty. This was her story. And it was just beginning. The end. If Roza's journey spoke to your soul, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Which alpha would you have chosen? Or like Roza, would you choose yourself? Remember, you're never too broken to choose yourself. You're never too lost to find your power. And you're always worth more than what others try to make you. This is Vverse, and I'll see you in the next universe.